Hello, this is Debbie, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I am so excited for today's guest. I can't wait for you to meet her. I've had some firsthand experience with her magic, and so I'm excited to be able to share her. I have on Janessa Finley, and she's a healer and a coach whose mission is to bring love and connection to those who have all but given up on having fulfillment and nurturing relationships. At the core of every single human is a need for connection, yet we inadvertently create patterns to push others away and protect ourselves. Sadly, this leads to never cultivating the love and relationships our hearts desire. The secret lies in the relationship you have with yourself as it creates the relationships you have with others. Janessa teaches through a path of self discovery how to love and embrace yourself so you can extend the same love and connection to others. And this is the first of two interviews that I'm going to be bringing to you with this lovely lady. We are going to be jumping into some functional medicine today. And so I am super excited to have you here, Janessa. Welcome.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I was like, oh, do I even let people know there's going to be another episode? And I'm like, yeah.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I'm so excited that we're able to connect, and talk about, the whole thing with spirituality and functional medicine and um just really wanting to just kind of dive into what actually is functional medicine for those who are like, what is this, a different type of doctor? I mean, so I'd love to hear what how you could be able to share that with everybody.
Yeah. Well, functional medicine is looking at the human body with it being all connected versus the allopathic approach where they look at a body part and they treat a part. And so with functional medicine, they look at the whole body being interconnected. And when one thing is out of balance, something else is going to be out of balance as well. And to bring the body back into the state of balance or homeostasis, which is naturally our body's job. And when you study biochem, it's really mind blowing to learn how the capacity that the body naturally has built into it to balance and counterbalance and try to always stay in that state of harmony within. Completely mind blowing. Gave me a whole new appreciation to the human body. It's a miracle. It's fascinating. But anyway, aside
It
from
is
completely,
fascinating.
yeah, completely geeking out about the human body, we look at the whole darn thing and we give people relief by doing more than just treating a symptom per se of one individualized part. Now that is what, functional medicine is. And I read blood labs as a blood lab specialist, but my approach is even further beyond just the physical. So as you had mentioned, as you're introing into this topic, we as humans are more than just our physical body. We have the mental aspect, the emotional aspect, the spiritual aspect. And so for me, it's treating the whole being. It's not just treating the whole body. And I will work with individuals that want just the physical aspect, just the labs and the symptoms. And they don't get the same results as the people who go all in and say, yep, let's get rid of those old emotions that I've been toting around since I was a kid when I experienced some trauma, and clean out the closet, and let's remove all of the things that are impacting my health, because those emotions clog up our nervous system. And when they're stagnant and stale and we just tote around those hardships with us, eventually it manifests into what I like to refer to as disease within
Mhm.
the body. And so it's not just a one angle approach to wellness. It's the practical and the spiritual, the woo and the physical and everything in between.
Oh, I love that. The dis-ease. Dis-ease. It's so true how it all comes together. I think we we used to practice those type of that type of medicine what over 100 years ago, and then the science just took over, incorporating all parts of it. So it's so nice to know that there are people like yourself out there who want to help, because I think science has shown us recently, like, there's a lot more sick people now living with chronic conditions than there was. I don't know if it's me getting older, but it seems like there's just so many more than even like 50, 60 years ago.
I agree. And I don't actually have stats on that. That's a fascinating point to bring up. But I can say, in reflecting, either I wasn't paying attention in my younger years, or we are trending toward less healthy culture as a whole in society, because it seems like it's become so normalized. It's what people expect. So while it's common, it's not normal. Like, our bodies are not made to have dis-ease or ailments or be sick. They're truly not. There's nothing about really the human being, especially coming from a spiritual side of creation and rejuvenation and the body's innate ability to heal. There's nothing really about us that has that destructive programming or nature. And so when that exists, there's something more than just what a pill can do to actually get to the root cause of what's driving those symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole pill culture is really for the birds. I don't even think the birds need the pill. I don't even know where that expression comes from, right? But
well, I think that there's something for everyone. And I think that it's good to have, there's absolutely a place for allopathic medicine. But I feel as though maybe it takes too much work for some people to adjust a lifestyle where taking a pill to make something feel better is easier. And we will then default to, well, there's a pill for that, and the pill is easy. But even more than that, I challenge the knowingness. What has been presented as normal or known within our culture are not some of these older healing practices. I mean, there are lots of things from an ancestral standpoint of fasting and moving your body, and simple things that people can do that really support their health and wellness, that have lost its regular incorporation into people's lives, and the importance of that. And what we know really more broadly as a culture is, let's go to the doctor and take a pill. And I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience too, of course, because that was my experience growing up. And I was a pretty sickly kid. I was the one in my family who always got the flu and came home sick. And I would be around someone who had a cold, and it would turn into bronchitis for me. And I would have bronchitis multiple times a year for a couple weeks at a time. It would take multiple trips to the doctor to get better with multiple prescriptions. And I was tolerant to several antibiotics in my early 20s. And it freaked me out. What is my health and life going to look like in 10 years if I'm already tolerant to several medications? And clearly it's not addressing why does a cold create so much more havoc and illness in my body than someone else's? Like, why can I be around people who just have a cold and I'm on the couch, I'm missing work for over a week, going to the doctor multiple times? This doesn't make sense to me. So clearly this system wasn't doing any more than treating my symptoms of that horrible cough and shortness of breath and fatigue and everything that came along with that.
Yeah.
So that is what motivated me personally to explore different options.
Oh, well, that's so interesting that you bring up the cold going to bronchitis, because in my, I'd say late or early 30s, to mid 30s, that's what started to happen to me, is that I would get a cold, and next thing you know, I would have bronchitis and sometimes walking pneumonia.
Ugh.
It would get, and then it would force me, it would force me to slow down. So my body's been sending symptoms for a long time about your, you know, it went from massive migraine headaches. Those went away. And then it showed up as another way, right? Trying to get my attention. Um, and that hasn't happened now, I can say, in many, 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 many years. I was able to break the cycle and start looking up, oh, what body area is, you know, with my lungs, what do I need to go address, and addressed on the whole beliefs stored in my body. So I love, that's what I got, when we started talking about the functional medicine. How do you go from, going to take all these antibiotics and getting built up where they're just not going to work for you in your 20s, to then being able to bridge that gap, I guess, from, like, there is a place for some of the standard healthcare, and which I do believe as well. And then what else can we do for how do you bridge that gap? I think we had talked about, maybe there's some myths that you could share with us of what we see in healthcare to help bridge, the spiritual aspect of functional medicine.
Yeah, the ability to tap into our self-healing. One myth that I love to bust is that our body isn't able to heal. And our body truly is able to heal. There's this innate wisdom inside our body that knows exactly how to repair and rejuvenate itself. But as you talked about, from your example and your experience, you listen to your body. But oftentimes when our body is not working the way we want it to, instead of being more inquisitive, what does this mean? What does it, from a belief system or an emotional standpoint, what am I storing in my lungs? What am I storing in my body that my lungs are experiencing this weakness or these symptoms? We don't tend to have that frame of mind. Instead, we're like, oh, my body, it's breaking down, it's betraying me, it doesn't work right, I just want to go do the thing, and it just wants to be on the couch. And, we really get frustrated with our body not operating or performing how we want it to. And I always get a good laugh with clients too when I'm asking them to do different things for their body to help it along its healing journey. And they're like, oh man, I can't believe you're having me do all this stuff. And I always respond like, I know it's so rough being in such a high maintenance body, but we are, like, our body has things it needs. And we tend to just turn it off and tune it out and not pay attention and not give it those needs. When we do that, we're squandering our body's ability to heal itself. And then we live in a culture that may send us messaging that we do need medications for the rest of our lives, because that's how we treat symptoms or treat a condition. And you're going to have the condition for the rest of your life. So that's the way. I recently worked with someone who had radial nerve palsy. For people who don't know what that is, now this is not a functional medicine story. It's a mind-body healing story. So like I said, I like to practice the woo and the physical. So we'll step out of the blood labs for just a second. But anyway, they had radial nerve palsy, which meant the signal wasn't getting from the brain to their hand. And their hand, their arm, it was all numb. They said it felt like having, like a meat cleaver at the end of their arm. Just everything was numb and not usable. I went to the doctor, and the doctor kind of joked and said, I often see this in 20-year-olds who get drunk and they fall asleep on their arm or pass out on their arm, and they wake up and it's dead, and it just takes some time for it to come back. Well, this woman was not 20 and she was not drinking. So that story didn't resonate too deeply with her. And they just essentially told her to go home. She felt very hopeless when she left there. It wasn't, let's rehab or have tools to give you. And so I worked with her and we just worked on clearing the blocks in the nervous system from the brain to the hand. And when she went back to that 6-week checkup, she had function of her hand, she had feeling in her arm. They had given her a brace for her wrist, and she was taking time out of that brace and very strategically building strength back in her arm, doing some gardening, working with a weight. But there was not a pill involved with that, and there wasn't a medical intervention involved with that. And it was simply connecting, the brain and the nervous system and those nerves back up with her arm and shoulder and hand. And the body did the rest.
Oh, the nervous system. The body is a miracle. That is for sure. And in her going through that with the whole nervous system, I know the last couple of years, our nervous systems have been under attack. Is that like too strong of a word?
Duress. Yeah, a lot of duress with all of the things happening, taking away our safety and security, constantly having these stories in the news about, all of the life events going on around us. All of that, people may not realize all of that triggers and burdens the nervous system. And if we don't have tools to keep moving those lower vibrational, heavy, fearful emotions through our body, it's going to eventually trigger, what I see most commonly, but it's not a one size fits all by any means, is anxiety, panic attacks, those types of things in people from that fear response. So yes, the nervous system has for sure experienced its fair share of duress through the pandemic, to say the least.
Yeah. I find myself, doing energetic healing on my nervous system just to try to keep myself grounded, or just be present without it, kind of going off the rails, I would say, with, feeling anxious or anxiety or overwhelm, or, all of those things that kind of come along with it.
Yeah, our brain is really made to keep us safe. Its job is to keep us safe. It does not care if we're happy. It does not care if we're crushing goals and joyful and blissful. Like, our brain is not devised for any of that. That is our heart. Our heart cares about how we feel. Our brain wants us alive. That's it. End of story. And so, the saying, like, life begins outside your comfort zone. Well, our brain's trying to keep us in our comfort zone because that keeps us alive and it keeps us safe. And so every time we do step outside our comfort zone, what we don't realize is there is a response from our brain and our nervous system from that. And so the biggest key in allowing us to expand and, be audacious in life and be risk takers and to do things we never thought we could do is to do exactly what you're saying you do, and work with that nervous system to keep it regulated. So as it has its response to keep us alive and keep us safe, we can just process that, let it on through, let it pass, and then take the next step of action that we want to take, versus getting withdrawn, pulled back into our comfort zone and play safe and stay alive, because that's the brain working at its finest.
Yeah. Go brain, go.
Yes.
We want team brain to be working at its finest for sure. Is there in the work that you're doing with the functional medicine part of it, is there things that people are starting to feel some of this disconnect within their own, nervous system, that something that you would recommend that they just kind of go to like begin with to understand how they can actually start to help themselves?
Yes. Well, when you mentioned from a functional medicine standpoint solely, there are supplements that will help calm the nerves and calm the nervous system and calm our mood and calm our adrenals and calm. It's all about the calm, right? To bring
Mm-hmm.
us down. So from a functional medicine standpoint, for sure, there are things that I would recommend for people to take to help with that. But I love that whole being approach. So I
Mm-hmm.
also have a tapping tutorial that I always share with my clients because it helps with sleep, it helps with anxiety, it helps with negative emotions, it helps with trauma, it can help with food allergies, food cravings. I mean, across the board, it's an amazing go-to tool. And so this is, my unique approach of mind body. Like it's more than just the blood labs, but the blood labs are amazing and magic in themselves too. I always feel like that's a tricky line to walk when you ask me
Yeah,
from a
it's a
functional
loaded
medicine
question. Yeah.
standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there are, but if you want those at-home tools to do on your own, I have a better tool in my toolkit that you can have in your toolkit as well.
Oh, and what would that be?
Yeah, it's the tapping. Have you heard of
EFT?
EFT?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a tapping tutorial and I'm happy to share it. You can drop it in the show notes and anyone can use it that wants to. It's a combination of two different types of tapping, one being EFT. So for anyone who is familiar with the emotional freedom technique, where you tap along different points on your body,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are on your face. It moves the energy through the nervous system and the energy pathways through our body. But then at the end, I mix in another tapping technique that has you move your eyes and it helps with brain reprogramming. And so that's where we can release a lot of different aspects of trauma, limiting beliefs, our thinking shifts, and you get a lot more bang for your buck, if you will, from that versus just EFT alone.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So we've kind of like skimmed over a little bit, and I will share that in the show notes too, by the way. I will share this little tool for everybody. And so I'm wondering then when I start thinking about um the direction of what we've been talking about is I think about something like menopause. So a lot of the listeners here are either in perimenopause, which seems like lasts for like half your life when you're in it, but and then menopause itself. And I'm in postmenopause. So I've been in menopause, I don't know, nine, I was young, 47, I'm 56 now. So 9 years I've been in menopause, and it has really played, um, yeah, it's just done a lot of changes. Like, we'll put it that way. Some and a lot of it I would not want, if I could have avoided some of it, I would have. But you've also mentioned blood work. And so I'm wondering, if we can talk a little bit about menopause and when you go to do your labs, um, what type of things are you looking for? What type of labs are you talking about? And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, let's get into it. So I'm going to crush one more myth before we dive in.
Okay.
And that is this idea that if there is something in my labs, if there's something wrong with me, my doctor will tell me. And that is really where this differing perspective of the functional medicine comes into play, where you talked about earlier when we look around society, we see a lot of illness or a lot of health stuff that we ourselves would not want to have. So, on the normal lab ranges from the lab report that you get, they are taking an average of about 90% of America, if you will, and setting that as the normal range. But functional medicine narrows it down. And I personally, when I look around, I don't want to be the average health of everyone else. I want my body working as well as it can for me. And so we narrow the ranges down to what is optimal. And so instead of looking for your favorite activity across the whole United States, you're now looking for your favorite activity in one city or one state. So it's the same concept. We're looking for your body's optimal functioning within a much smaller range within a city or state, per the analogy, versus this really broad, large range that is the average of everyone around us. So just to give the listeners a little bit of understanding of what is different and why would my doctor not talk to me about these things if really there's something you can see in these labs that my doctor isn't. Well, the doctors just are not trained with this lens or with this filter, whatever you want to call it. It's a different approach. So then you asked a lot of questions. We'll break them all down because what the lab panels I look at, menopause, let's first of all talk about one of the biggest changes with menopause is that transition from, first of all, the reduction of hormones being produced, but also the reproductive organs stop producing them and it switches to the adrenals. So a lot of people don't know that their hormones are being made by a whole different part of their body. Now, granted, the hormones being made in menopause are, not the same as when you're a cycling woman, but we have to support the body differently for how it's functioning through those changes. Another huge, huge, huge factor with hormones is blood sugar. So underneath all hormone imbalance is a blood sugar irregularity or blood sugar imbalance. I have had some people utilize, some lifestyle changes, what they're eating, how they're eating, when they're eating it, and then add in a blood sugar stabilizer and their night sweats will stop and they'll sleep through the night just with one supplement. And some people need to have their adrenals supported and their blood sugar supported, and then they're sleeping through the night and the night sweats are stopping and some of that brain fog will start to clear out. So it's really looking, like I said in the very beginning, looking at the whole body, all of the factors that go into what is contributing to this imbalance in the body, because it's not going to be just the ovaries. It's not going to be just the adrenals. And the liver comes into play with hormones as well. So there's a lot of, if you want to use the word toxic, I'm not sure that's the best word, but there's a lot that we're exposed to in everyday living with air quality and cleaning products and the chemicals put on our food to grow them or to process them. And the more and more that we absorb these things and the liver becomes congested and clogged, then the liver has a really hard time with making the hormone conversions. And that the word that was popping into my head was transformation. And I'm like, that is not the right word for this part.
Yeah.
So making hormone conversions as are needed. So that comes into play in all of our hormones, not just reproductive hormones. So I don't want to get too deep into one bunny hole that I lose the listeners that are, new to this type of concept and looking at the body. And without specific numbers for someone, their blood labs, it's hard to walk through a specific example to tie it all together. But the other big, big, big contributor, aside from, of course, blood sugar, that I like to look at when I'm dealing with hormones of any kind are hidden infections or low-grade infections. And when those, such as, like Epstein-Barr would be an example of one where you can have Epstein-Barr mono and it goes dormant, but it's still active within your body. It's just not active to the point where you have a high fever or you have the aches or you have the fatigue at a level where I know when I had it when I was a kid, like I just I laid. Like my body was horizontal all day for a couple weeks. Like I was just so tired. So you're not at that level, but it's still in your body and it's still draining your tank. So when your body's constantly in the state of fighting off something that's even a low grade infection, your body can't thrive. And we never know where those infections are going and attacking. So for one person, it might be their thyroid. For another person, it might be the liver. For another person, it might be the kidney. For another person, it might be joints causing the joint pain. And so we just have to look at all of the components to get each body functioning in that optimal space for that person.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I could go down that rabbit hole too, because I feel like I started to learn a lot about the liver, my lack of gallbladder, my, the hormones, my adrenals, all lots of stuff there. But now with all of the blood labs, and then you layer on the whole spiritual mind body part of it. Oh, I what I can't even formulate the question, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like layering both of those together with that huge change that your body's going through without when it stops cycling and it starts shifting over where the hormones are coming from in your adrenals. I don't know if people have heard about the adrenal fatigue. That seems to be pretty I've heard about it a lot myself. So
I feel like it's very common. I'm probably a little biased because I experienced it in my 20s. So, I rode the Hot Mess Express, which is really what brought me on this journey to get my poop in a group. But yeah, I had adrenal fatigue at a pretty young age. My dad was in a car accident. He had an illness at the time. My mom was having some health struggles. I was working a very high stress job. And for those who don't know what your adrenals are, they are glands that sit on top of your kidneys in your back. And their job is to produce cortisol. So it is your stress hormone that gets released when life's a little bit heavy. So my life was super heavy, like tons of bricks during this period of time. And my adrenals burnt out. Plus, I was doing the whole Monster, whatever energy drink I could get my hands on. And so like I was just depleting my adrenals from every aspect I could. So if you are someone who can't wake up in the morning, you wake up, you get out of bed, but you're really not awake until maybe 10 a.m. and you flow through life pretty okay from about 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And around 2 p.m., you want to crawl under your desk and take a nap, only to get a second wind at 9 p.m. when you want to go to bed. That's pretty standard adrenal fatigue pattern, where the system, the clock, the internal clock, like everything is just haywire. But yes, as you mentioned, in regards to menopause and the adrenals, we need the adrenals to be able to do what they're designed to do and not to be so tired and so depleted that they can't even produce the hormones that they're made to produce. And we look at the levels within the regular blood labs that you get from your doctor within the comprehensive metabolic panel. So you were asking me which blood labs to get, and there are several, but that is where I go to check people's adrenal levels or health, adrenal health. That would be a good way of saying it, to see if they are having any stress showing up within their adrenals. And it's that easy. Like we're not usually getting a whole lot of extra blood labs beyond what your doctor's already drawing. So if you are going to an annual appointment with your doctor, I have a workshop. I don't have one scheduled right now, but I usually do one. Maybe by the time this comes out, there'll be one calendared. I do one every couple of months where I bring people in, bring your blood labs, and let's see if you have, we just do the infections and check and see if there are low-grade infections. And people will just be mind blown at what information they get in that hour of looking at their labs from a different angle. And that's really important in this conversation with menopause, because infections drive so many hormonal imbalances. It's pretty bananas. So it's always a great place to start, even for wanting to have a better state of balance with your hormones.
Well, I will definitely, before we publish this, check back to add in this workshop, because that's pretty powerful to be able to just walk people through with labs that they already have access to and look at an infection that they could be carrying and just have no idea.
Yep. Yeah. The CBC with differential is where I look at what the immune system is responding to. And I absolutely adore my doctor. I, if you will, shopped around very thoroughly before selecting my doctor, because I wanted someone on my team. I wanted someone who was a good fit for me. And of course, you know, we want someone who takes our insurance too. So sometimes finding that person who has the right mindset is very, very, very valuable. And he's not trained to look at labs the way I look at. And every year when I have my labs drawn and we go over them, he's like, okay, I know you look at things differently. And every year he asks more and more questions about how I'm looking at things. And when I, agree to disagree that, for instance, triglycerides, I think that triglycerides can be too low. And he says the lower, the better, the healthier the lifestyle. And I'm like, no, actually, I want my tris higher than that, because that is a key indicator to me that I'm going to have something else go on with my health down the road if I don't get more healthy fats into my diet and get my triglycerides up. And so we had a wonderful conversation around that, because I have such a fantastic open-minded doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so valuable to have a team around you and not just have one authoritative person. And that's not to discredit, like, he is a brilliant man and I don't want to take anything away from his knowledge either. But it's fascinating conversations that we can have, melding the worlds together and looking at them differently, especially when it's a blood lab panel that he wouldn't normally even be reviewing, except for the fact that I asked him to run it for me and he was happy to oblige.
I've had doctors do that for myself when because when I was in probably that first year and a half, I went to, she was actually a pharmacist. She was a compound pharmacist, and she wanted different labs run for me to be able to look at. And so it got my brain kind of going. And I think I found, was it Northrop? Oh, I can't think of her first name. But I had this big book about menopause, and it was really along these Christine Northrop, I think her name is, along these lines of these different blood tests. And so that's why I got so excited, when we connected, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you're talking about like what I was kind of reading about in the book, and, the different values, but yours is just way beyond what it was focused on, because you're talking about the infections and how that all fits together. So I lost my other question. I don't know. I'm getting some brain fog. I really think maybe I need to go to this workshop that you're talking about.
That is very common, that brain fog. So we were talking about which labs. I know I haven't answered that question, and you did ask. So the CBC, your doctor is either going to run a CBC or a CBC with differential. My doctor, he just usually runs the CBC. There's a lot of other doctors out there who will run the differential, but to look at the immune system, we do want the CBC with differential, because the differential portion is going to tell us what the immune system is responding to. And I'll be able to get a lot more information out of what is your body doing in there. And then, as I mentioned, the comprehensive metabolic panel, which the CMP, it's commonly called, is another blood lab that is standard at physicals and annual blood lab draws, checkups. So that is not challenging to get either. The lipid panel, so getting your cholesterol, your tris, your healthy fat, bad fat, all of that, LDL, HDL, ran as well. Glucose, because especially with hormones, we want to see what's going on with the blood sugar. The spikes and dips are going to make our hormones spike and dip too. And then just depending on what people are dealing with, I love to have information on the thyroid. So free T3, free T4, in addition to the TSH, which is standardly ran by doctors. An iron panel is also really helpful. It's interesting to see what the iron panel looks like, even though the CBC, which does give us some insight to iron anemia, the CBC can look really good, but then the iron panel can be a little bit wonky. So I've learned that having the iron panel is really helpful as well to see, because here's the key thing about iron. When you go back to the building blocks of what makes the body work, I'm not going to take you deep into biochem, I promise. We'll keep it really, really simple. But our cells need oxygen to do their job. And iron is part of what oxygenates our cells, if you will. So it's a building block that allows our cells to do what it's designed to do. Our cells make ATP, or energy. And so if you don't have iron, you're going to be very fatigued and very, very tired. And there's more than just iron anemia out there too. There's also B vitamin anemia. So we're able to tell so much from the blood labs of if your fatigue is adrenal fatigue. Is it from a low-grade infection? Are your cells just simply not oxygenated to the level that they need to be? And we need to get some iron or some B vitamins in there, or get the conversion process, because the B vitamins we eat are not the B vitamins that our body uses. Do we just need to get that conversion up and running in the body better so that you can use the B vitamins that you're taking in through your food sources and convert it into the form that your cells need to be able to do their job? All of this, we can look at these blood labs and have insight to where's that fatigue coming from. And we're not throwing darts at a dartboard. We have a really clear path of what is going to help support someone to feel better.
And don't we all want to feel better? I mean, how many memes do we see on coffee, right? Like, you can't even count every day. It's all about coffee, coffee, coffee. And, that whole cycle of what it's doing with the dependency and the coming down and the, et cetera. What I found really interesting when you were talking about the blood was that you mentioned the glucose, because I've been hearing a lot lately about, oh my gosh, I just forgot the term, but it's, is it glucose intolerance or,
insulin resistance?
Insulin resistance. I've been hearing a lot about insulin resistance.
Yeah, I'm slightly interested in why we're hearing so much about insulin resistance. I have heard Tony Robbins wrote a book. Have you read this book, or have you heard this?
Okay. No.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just starting rumors on a podcast. No big deal, right?
Well, we'll Google it after.
Yes, please do. But I'm fairly certain he wrote a book about using metformin. And metformin is the prescription medication that supports our glucose levels, which is where I'm bringing this all full circle, starting with a rumor. But
metformin, anyway, diabetics, yeah.
Yeah, people are having, success with weight loss by taking metformin to support their blood sugar levels. And I feel as though maybe that's part of the craze about all of the insulin resistance and or glucose stuff, because when you get very notable people speaking out about maybe what worked for them, then we have a whole, horde of people that are like, oh, well, I want to try it too. So insulin resistance can play a factor in hormones, the inability to lose weight. And, it's always really interesting. There's philosophies and theories out there for everyone. I have even listened to a podcast episode of someone who said there is no insulin resistance, and then broke down the whole paradigm, which is not the paradigm I live in yet, so I can't recite it. But anyway, I just love to mention this to help people advocate for themselves, right? Like when I was unknowing of anything that was going on in my body other than I'm exposed to a cold, I get bronchitis, I go to the doctor, I get several prescriptions, and I repeated that over and over and over. My doctor never told me, hey, there's a better way. It was once I started seeking out understanding of how my body works, exactly like you're talking about. You got a book, you started going down the rabbit hole. Like we sometimes give too much power away for other people to solve our problems. And it's our vehicle, it's our body, it's the one and only body that we get to drive ourselves around in this life. And so be curious, explore different ways, different options, different theories. If you feel called to that, maybe because it's the right thing for you. And this is not a discussion to get down into genetics, but our genetics play a factor in our health as well. So I don't feel like there's a one size fits all, like a lot of people will ask me, should I keto? Should I paleo? Should I vegan? What should I do? How should I eat? There isn't one diet to me personally, and there's a lot of other people out there that will have a very vastly different opinion, but I don't believe that there is one diet for each and every body. Mm-hmm. Our bodies all have different contributing factors to how it functions, and we need to take an individualized approach for us. And I truly, like, if I spark no other interest on this podcast than this, it is for you to be curious about what's going on inside of your body. Look at different options, expand your mind. What possibly could be this idea that insulin resistance doesn't even exist when in the medical world, it's very established that it does, that people will gain weight because of their body's inability to process the glucose and the hormone issue, which leads to infertility struggles and on and on. But then there's a whole nother paradigm out there of something completely different driving that bus. So anyway, that's a bit of a bunny trail, but like I cannot advocate for yourself. And even in going to different medical appointments with family members, asking questions and being told by a doctor, I just don't look at that. Like we have to find our own answers sometimes. We can't just default to someone who has a degree or has, and I'm not dismissing or belittling any doctor out there. They have their system, but sometimes I don't look at that. Maybe isn't really the best answer for our body.
I cannot agree with you even more. I want to raise my hands and go, hallelujah, because, taking that approach this last year, I slowed down and started to really pay attention to different things, like exactly what you're talking about at an even greater level of, I took time, I probably took a year to establish how much sleep my body needs to be optimal. And I was shocked to find out that I need 9 hours a night of restful sleep. And that was shocking because I think most, career minded women or an entrepreneur or a mom with kids or parents or pets or a marriage or a relationship, 9 hours, that's like going to bed with the chickens. Like, and when I'm not honoring myself with that, I can surely tell a difference with that. And as well as when you were talking about the food, I started to really pay attention to food triggers in my body, not like allergies, but I've always been dairy intolerant. So I grew up not liking the taste of dairy. Well, staying with my sister, they eat keto. There's a lot of different cheeses, like they make raviolis with cheeses instead of pasta. So I started to do energetic work on my dairy intolerance so that I could eat their food. And what I found was that my body really liked more leafy vegetables, and it liked that protein for myself. I retested it and found that with some internet fasting, like I don't eat till noon, not a big deal. It's not like I have a short window. I have like 6 hours to eat that. And I recently tested it with this family health crisis that happened, and I went off of it, and I can surely tell the difference. And it's just from paying attention. It was, what kind of foods do I like and my body likes, and just how much can I reduce sugar in my diet? It was really surprising to discover how much sugar was in everything.
It is in everything. And it has so many different names. So they also are tricky and ninja into stuff that you don't think it's in because you don't know the complete list of names that sugar gets listed on nutritional facts. It's very true. I also had many, many years ago eliminated dairy from my diet, and I don't eat a ton of dairy anymore, but I have my like happy medium place with dairy because I used to drink, a gallon of milk probably every week, and I ate cottage cheese and yogurt was my breakfast. And these were daily staples in my life, lots and lots of dairy. Someone suggested that I just stop all dairy for 21 days. Just try it for 21 days and see what happens. I did have achy joints and some inflammation, different factors like that. And the mucus definitely had like drainage and clearing my throat all the time. Anyway, I was mind blown within it was 7 or 10 days of stopping all of that dairy that I was consuming every day. I lost 7 pounds, and it wasn't 7 pounds of mass. It was, 7 pounds of inflammation and fluid because of the response my body was having to what I was eating. So yeah, paying attention to how your body responds to the foods, your body will tell you what it needs, what it likes, what it's copacetic with, or what irritates it if we listen. That sometimes our taste buds trick us like, oh, this is just going to taste so good that trumps everything. And we don't listen to the response of, if this feels good or if it feels bad because it tasted amazing.
Right. And, what's interesting is just like what you did with dairy. Like I saw very little levels of dairy in my diet. Like but at least I can do little bits of it. Like if I have cauliflower crust pizza, there's some cheese on it, but yep. But what's been interesting is that the tasting of it, like I had a little bit of like birthday cake, traditional birthday cake. Man, it was like crack. Once I had that, all of a sudden I wanted more sugar. And it is so amazing how it like, even like healthy food tastes different than all the sugar foods. And so getting used to more, plain food, which I don't consider it plain. I just, I've kind of gotten used to a different taste buds of food, of natural food. And so to do that, but then all of a sudden your body is having these cravings. It was crazy. Like,
well, some of those cravings are driven by what's going on inside our body too. So if our glucose is high, we're going to have those sugar cravings. If our adrenals are out of balance, we're going to have salt cravings. So some of that can even be indicative of how your labs are going to show up and read too.
Cool. Oh, that's just so, it's just all so fascinating. I could talk with you for hours and I could get all geeked out about some of the stuff, but I won't.
I did enough of that for both of us.
Well, and I love that you love it because, we get to benefit from it. So if somebody's interested in connecting with you, how can they find you?
They can visit my website, www.fiercelyradiantsoul.com. And there is the option for blood labs right there on my homepage to have a one-on-one blood lab review, where I will interpret everything, get your history, your symptoms, and then interpret everything, go over it with you, and give you your individualized plan of how to get your body back in balance. They can also, if I have Facebook friends listening, you can also find me in the group, the Facebook group, Stronger Together, Strengthening Your Intimate Relationships. And if you want to experience some of the mind-body aspect of my work, there is at least once a month, I go live in there and I share about our brain, how our brain works. We rewire the brain a little bit. I guide you through some mindset shifts, and you can experience a little bit of that mental, emotional woo side of my work too.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Oh, I will definitely share this on in the show notes as well. And look forward to sharing more when we continue our discussion in our next interview process. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this. It's just been so powerful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.